good. Good to see you. Hope you've had a great 4th. Maybe some of you took a couple of extra days to enjoy a little vacation time on this holiday weekend. Maybe some of you are heading on vacation this week, or you're starting your vacation, or heading on vacation in a few weeks. Our family went on vacation down in the Outer Banks a couple of weeks ago. And other than the 8+ hours it took us to drive back home on that Saturday, you never want to go back to the beach after that, right? You forget like the next year, like, hey, we're never doing this again. And you're like, oh, let's go do this again. Other than that, we actually had a really great time. On Thursday evening, while we were at the beach, I took our dog out to use the bathroom to go for a little bit of a walk. And I looked up to the north, and if you're familiar with Outer Banks, up to the north, you have Virginia Beach. And I could see there was these incredible clouds, and they were just being lit up with lightning. Ran back inside, went up on the upper deck of where we were staying, and just sat out there for just a little bit, just to watch this incredible storm, right? Now, I couldn't see any of the bolts that were hitting the ground, but what I could see were the aftermath of it in the clouds. And it was like a storm I'd never seen before. In fact, it was the same storm you guys got Thursday, a little bit earlier that day, that did quite a bit of damage and knocked out power to quite a few people. But it was just absolutely amazing, like lightning after lightning after lightning. Some of you are probably used to that. I'm not used to that. Just watched it as it would just light up these clouds over and over and over again. I thought, man, this is so beautiful. And then at the same time, I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not out on the water underneath a storm like this one. Well, today, as we continue our summer series called Down by the Water, we're going to talk about a story that we find in Scripture where these people are caught in this body of water, this lake, and they're caught in this storm. Now, before I get there, though, I'm inviting you to be a part of what we're doing within this series, because in this series, we're asking you to turn in, to supply photos for us about your trips this summer. For instance, this is from our time away. I'm sure you guys are doing that because of me in the photo. This is my wife, Kara, of course, me, and this is our grandson, Colton. He looks real cute right before he goes to bed there. But what we're asking you to do is, as your vacations come up, if you're doing them at the ocean, at a lake, a river, a pond, swimming pool, backyard, little kiddie pool, whatever it is, take photos. You can send them to social@thejourneynova.org. It's not socials, no S, okay? social@thejourneynova.org. Or on Instagram, you can tag us at @thejourneynova, hashtag down by the water. We're using those in some of our bumpers, but at the end of this series, we're hoping to kind of compile these and do a little short video, just kind of show everybody what's happened in your lives over the summertime. So I hope you will jump in and be a part of that, all right? All right, there's my advertisement. Back to the message. Mark chapter 4 is where we're going to spend our time today. And if you're familiar with Mark chapter 4, it begins, it's actually a full day in the life of Jesus. The whole chapter is. And it begins with Jesus teaching this large group of people. And he finishes with that. Then he goes and spends some time with his disciples. And with his disciples, he talks to them about what he was teaching that day. He dives a little deeper into some topics of faith. And now it's at the end of the day. It's evening time. They're there on the shore of the Sea of Galilee in Capernaum, which is had become Jesus' headquarters. And now it's time for them to kind of move on to their next place. And so that leads us into Mark chapter 4, starting with verse 35. As evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. Before I jump into this story and talk about this a little bit more, I want to actually dive into the relationships that we have here. We have Jesus and these disciples, and I want to do this because I really think it helps us understand the rest of what we're going to read this morning. I know this comes early in the book of Mark, and so many times when something happens early, we're like, oh, this must be early on in their time together. Mark chapter 4 is probably about 12 to 18 months since Jesus chose this group of guys to follow him. So they've been together for quite a long time, okay? They've spent almost every single day together in that time period. They eat together, they play together, they work together, they sleep together, they hang out together. I mean, they do absolutely everything together. This is a really close-knit group of people because they're with each other all the time. So that means they know each other very well, don't they? They know idiosyncrasies. They know what some of them like and don't like. They know what makes some of them laugh and what makes some of them mad. I mean, they know everything about this group of guys that they have been with for up to a year and a half. They are functioning in many ways like a very close, tight-knit family. You probably have people like this in your life, people that you're very close to. Maybe it's family members. Maybe it is close friends, but you're very connected to them. You know everything about them, and they know everything about you. They know you don't like mayonnaise. You know that they love marshmallows. They know that if they ask you where you want to go eat, you're going to say Five Guys. You know if you ask them, they're going to say Kava. I mean, you know what makes them laugh. You know what makes them cry. They know what makes you laugh and makes you cry. I mean, you just know these people in and out because you are so connected to them. But at the same time, you know these people got your back, right? These are the people that when you're having relational issues will sit down and listen to you. These are the people in your life that when you're struggling with your job, they're going to give you advice. They're going to give you guidance on what your next steps should be. That when you're sick, they're going to bring you food. That when you have a financial issue, they're not even going to ask what it's for. They're just going to say, how much do you need? And they're going to give it to you. I mean, you've got these people in your life who know you so well because you are so connected to them. And it's incredible when you've got people like that in your life. And here with Jesus and his disciples, I think we've got the same thing. They're very, very connected. They're doing life together on a daily basis. Something many of us have with others. And yet here they are on this normal day in Mark chapter 4, where it starts like any other with Jesus. They're doing the same thing they've done many times with Jesus. And now Jesus says, why don't we go to the other side of this lake? Again, something Jesus had probably said quite often to them. Now, they get in the boat, and I'm going to put this image up here. This is the Sea of Galilee. They're in Capernaum, which is about 11 o'clock on this particular image. And they're going to this place called Kiersey, which is at 3 o'clock on this map that you see there. It's about 3 to 4 miles to go from Capernaum there to Kiersey. And it could take you a few hours depending on the weather, okay? Now, how are they going to get there? Of course, they're going to get there on a boat. Now, this is what the boats in those days, fishing boats, would have looked like. These boats are about 27 feet long by 8 feet wide. There was no 250 horsepower motor on the back of this thing. Depending on how fast you want to get somewhere, you either put those sails up or you used your muscles, right? And so this is the kind of boat that they're in. They're on the Sea of Galilee. And so they begin this trip from Capernaum down to Kiersey. Verse 37. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Now think about this day, right? Mark chapter 4, it's been a really long day for them. I bet physically they are tired. They've been probably going from place to place, moving around there in Capernaum. They're probably people tired. You know what that's like when you've been around people for a long time? Like, I just don't want to talk to another person, see another person for a while. I mean, they're probably people tired. They're looking for a little R&R. They think they're getting on this boat, and it's going to be like a Potomac dinner cruise they're getting ready to jump on. Like, this is what they're looking forward to, right? They're going to get on this boat. They're going to have some food. They're going to hang out with their friends. They're going to go over to this other place. And then, boom, out of nowhere, the storm hits. Now, that term storm that we see there in this particular verse, if you look at it in the Greek, it can also mean hurricane. So this just isn't some little summer shower that pops up. I mean, this is a legit, big, powerful storm that comes out of nowhere on the Sea of Galilee. It reminds me of what happened a couple weeks ago in Lake Tahoe. If you saw the news or read the news, this is the aftermath of that particular storm. Witnesses say, or people say, that at the beginning of that day, they were told the forecast was light winds and beautiful blue skies. And then witnesses say within 15 to 30 minutes, everything changed. That all of a sudden there's 35 to 45 mile per hour winds, sometimes with wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour. And then the waves on the water that day were 6 to 10 feet high. I mean, that's something you don't find on a lake, right? That's something you find on an ocean. Now, if you know much about what happened on this particular day, it caused millions and millions of dollars of damage to property. But sadly, 8 lives were lost when that storm hit there. But I kind of think about that, and we think, well, Sea of Galilee thing, that doesn't happen. No, it happens. And so what we see happen to Sea of Galilee is very much what happened to Lake Tahoe. That just came out of nowhere and caused this incredible storm. I've never been to the Sea of Galilee before, and it seems kind of weird that a storm like that would hit, but people that have been there and have talked to people that are from there, they'll tell them, yeah, this is pretty normal. Because of the way the wind travels, the northern end of the Sea of Galilee, the topography, it kind of captures wind within it, and then it funnels it out south. And as it does that, it creates these big, powerful, violent storms. And so that's what we have happening here in our story. This event that Jesus, the life of Jesus, they're out there kind of getting some R&R, trying to rest from the day they've just had, trying to cross this lake, and boom, out of nowhere, this incredible storm hits them. The waves are 6 to 10 feet tall. The water's coming into the boat. Their boat is getting ready to sink, and they start to wonder, what's going to happen to us? You ever woke up on a sunny morning where you look outside and there's blue skies and the wind's blowing just a little bit? It's not deathly humid like it is here during the summertime, and you just kind of think about your day, and you're like, yeah, I got a good day planned. Like, I know my schedule. I know what I'm going to be doing. I know where I'm going to be going. I know who I'm going to be with. And you're just like, this is going to be a normal day. But in the midst of that normal day, boom, the storm comes. You get a phone call that your mom or dad has had a heart attack or had a stroke. Or maybe a family member you're close to, you get the news they've been killed in a car accident. Or the job you love that you think, hey, this is a job I'm going to do for the rest of my career. You get an email that says, please don't come in today. Your job is terminated. Or your best friend that you've known for years and you talk to frequently, you get a phone call that says, hey, last night they took their life. Or maybe you've tried and tried to get pregnant over the years, and finally it happens, and you think today's going to be a normal day, and then you find out you have a miscarriage. Or maybe it's your marriage. You've been working at it, and it's been tough and difficult, and you're not sure how things are going, but you feel like you're moving in a good direction. You feel like you've kind of gotten over that hump, and then those divorce papers arrive. Like those unexpected storms, they are tough on us. Now, we could go on and on with this list, right? We could sit up here all day, and we could just list these storms that show up in our lives. And we know people that have been through those storms. And we've kind of watched them and experienced that. It's like, oh, man, that's really hard for them. I'm glad that's not me. And yet for probably many of us, too, we've been there. Like, we've lived through those storms. Like, yeah, those storms are tough. Or maybe for even some of us, we are on the water right now in the boat, and the storm is raging around us. It's tough when those storms come our way because it wreaks havoc in our lives. And I don't think we're much different than these disciples, right? We're asking the same question, what do I do now? This wasn't how my day was supposed to be. This wasn't how my life was supposed to turn out, but right now the waves are crashing, the water's coming in the boat's sinking. What do I do? How do I handle this storm? Well, what do these disciples do? Look at verse 38. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples woke him up shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" Now think about these guys, they go into the water that day with a calm sea. The storm hits, the waves are crashing, the water's coming in the boat's about to sink. They don't know what to do. Here's the kicker for me in this story. What was the job of many of these guys on the boat? They were fishermen, right? Have you ever thought about that before? Here are these guys that have been on this water hundreds, maybe thousands of times throughout their life. Here's this storm that hits, and they don't know what to do. They have no idea what to do. Maybe one of them forgot to open up one of their 7 weather apps to check the weather that day. I don't know. But if these guys are afraid of this particular storm, then that really tells us what kind of storm we're talking about. What's their reaction to this? It's fear, right? They are afraid. They have this human reaction to this immediate life-threatening situation. I mean, first, there's the fear of the unknown, the storm that has scared them. It seems like something, from what we can tell, because they don't know what to do in this moment, that they've never experienced this before. But there's also this fear of they don't know how to control the situation. What do we do with the storm that is happening here? Because normally, as fishermen, they would know exactly what to do to make sure that they were safe. They don't know what to do because this storm is so different, and this fear takes over. And they do the only thing they know left to do. They go find Jesus. And what's old Jesus doing? He is asleep, okay? Now, this is probably just me, pastor humor, whatever it is, but I find this part of this story so funny to me that Mark throws this in here because notice what he says, right? There's this terrible storm, hurricane-like nature, waves crashing, boats sinking, and Jesus is sleeping on the back of the boat, Mark says, with his head on a cushion, right? Like, is this a Posturepedic pillow? Because the dude is out cold. Like, it's just perfect that he doesn't even feel the waves and everything that's happening. I don't know what it is, but he is asleep in the midst of this terrible, terrible storm. How can he do that? I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit at the end and talk about this attitude Jesus has towards this storm. But let's go back to those disciples. They're afraid, they're scared, they're freaking out, they're thinking death is imminent for them. And they do the only thing that's left for them to do. They go wake up a sleeping Jesus. And what do they say? Jesus, don't you care? We might die. Remember what I told you earlier on with these guys and Jesus? They've known him for up to 18 months at this point, and they've seen Jesus do some amazing things. They've seen him turn water into wine. They've seen him heal people that were sick. They've seen him even bring dead people back to life, right? They've seen some incredible things with Jesus. And yet they ask this question, don't you care that we are going to drown? Can you kind of sense the conflict there and the panic? Like on the one hand, they understand that Jesus cares about their well-being. Because Jesus has been with them all this time. Jesus has helped them all this time. They've seen Jesus help other people. So they understand that piece. But on the other hand, the storm hits out of nowhere. And now their faith has taken over. Their fear has taken over from their faith. Like the storm has changed something in them. Now that their life feels threatened, this fear sets in. Even though they've seen Jesus do so many things. And yet they're also questioning, Jesus, how can you sleep in this moment? It's because fear is powerful. And not only is fear powerful in the story, I think fear is powerful in our own lives. I told you a little bit earlier, we went to the Outer Banks a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be honest, the water was the most beautiful I've ever seen it. Usually, if you've been there before, it's like dirty brown, like you can't see anything. It really scares you, but it was blue-green, and you could see the bottom. It was freezing cold, but it was absolutely beautiful. Never seen it like that before. But for some reason, and maybe it was because it was so clear, there was also a lot of wildlife that was close to shore while we were there. I know this because one morning early on, I woke up and looked out, and there were 10 fishing boats, and they're less than 100 yards from shore. So that means they're fishing, okay? It means actually three things to me. One, it means that there's some good fishing really close to shore. Secondly, it meant that there were predators really, really close to shore. And thirdly, it meant that old Chad wasn't going to get too far out in the water because of this, right? I do kind of have this fear, it's probably because of watching the movie Jaws many years ago, that Jaws is going to eat me, okay? And so I don't really like going out in the water too far. Now, the other piece to this, and maybe you saw this in the news, like Jaws' brother was pinging like the largest great white they've seen on the East Coast in years, just off the Outer Banks shore too. So throwing all those things together, my fear kicked in, like the water's cold, I'm just going to use that as an excuse that I'm not going to get in the water too far. Maybe you have fears like that too, okay? Maybe you're like me, you fear Jaws is going to eat you. Or maybe you fear tunnels. Maybe you fear enclosed spaces, spiders, snakes. Maybe you fear death. Maybe you fear getting sick. Maybe you fear someone you love being taken from you too early. We have fears in our lives, and those fears influence us on a daily basis. That fear influences the words we say and the actions we take. The fear that we have influences what we do and don't do. Fears we have, they influence us when it comes to how we handle tough situations. Fear influences us when it just comes to our day-to-day life and the things that we do on a consistent basis. And so I think for us, we're very much like these disciples. When uncertainties or unknowns of life come our way, fear can take over. But what does that fear lead to? Fear often leads to doubt. Look at that question again. Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care about the power of this storm? Don't you care that the waves are filling our boat? Don't you care that the boat is sinking? Jesus, don't you care about us? Yet here are these guys that have been around Jesus for maybe up to 18 months at this point in time. They know what Jesus is capable of doing. They've seen him do some amazing things. They know who is in the boat with them, right? They know that Jesus is there, and they know he's a lot different than anybody else they've ever been around. And yet this fear in this moment is leading them to this doubt about him. When storms hit in your life, how do you deal with it? How do you handle it? When that diagnosis comes back and it's not what you were expecting, how do you handle that moment? When someone that you love dies unexpectedly, how do you deal with that loss? Because let's be honest, your day may have started. It may have been bright and blue skies and light winds, and at the end of the day, this huge storm has come in and it's wreaking havoc on your life. What do you do? For many of us, that's where fear sets in. What's this mean for me? What's this mean for us? What's this mean for my family? How am I going to handle this storm? But I think oftentimes that fear then leads us to doubt. Those of us who say we follow Jesus, we can say, hey, I believe in Jesus, and I believe Jesus wants the best for me and loves me and cares for me and desires the best for me. But something happens, a storm hits, and we don't know what to do with that storm that has come our way. Especially when it feels like Jesus is asleep on the boat. Almost like he doesn't care. That doubt begins to creep into us, and we ask that question, is Jesus really worth following? But here's the deal. When those storms hit, like this is where our faith is tested. But we don't want those tests, right? We want life to be great. We want to wake up and every day is blue skies and the wind's barely blowing and it's just amazing every single day. But we know that's not how life is. We are promised suffering in this life. I use this passage when I do funerals or celebrations of life because I think there's so much good that we can gather from this when we lose people that are close to us. And sometimes I will reference C.S. Lewis's book, A Grief Observed. He writes this book after the loss of his wife. His wife dies of cancer. And so he does what I think is very healthy. He writes about that. But in his book, he writes these words. He says this. He says, no one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. I am not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. The same fluttering in the stomach, the same restlessness, the yawning. Keep on swallowing. At other times, it feels like being mildly drunk or concussed. There is a sort of invisible blanket between the world and me. I find it hard to take in what anyone says, or perhaps hard to want to take it in. We were promised sufferings. They were part of the program. We were even told, blessed are they that mourn, and I accept it. I've got nothing that I hadn't bargained for. Of course, it is different when the thing happens to oneself, not to others, and in reality, not imagination. I read those words and I think this really describes grief really well. When we lose someone who is close to us, those emotions, that tension, those questions come about because of the storm that we are facing. But I think these words are so powerful no matter what we may face in any storm that may come our way. Because like he says here, we are promised sufferings in life. We are promised storms in this life. And with these storms comes fear. And with these storms comes doubt. And we begin to ask God, God, where are you? God, why aren't you helping? God, don't you care? And the reality is, I think at this moment is where we get to this place of where we are really saying, hey, God, I don't trust you anymore. Hey, God, I've lost that faith in you. Again, I think we see this in the story with these disciples in this moment with Jesus. They go and wake him up. Verse 39, when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Kind of imagine them going up to Jesus and shaking him, right? Because he's sleeping so well on that Posturepedic pillow that he doesn't even notice what's happening. And they shake him, and he gets up, and he probably stretches a little bit, yawns. He probably cracks his neck, grabs his lower back, and pops it into place like many of us do every single morning when we wake up, right? Like, this is what I kind of imagine him doing. And yet, when he finishes that, he just tells the storm, "Silence, be still." And everything is calm at the words of Jesus. But notice what he says to his disciples in verse 40. "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Jesus says a lot in those few words right there, right? But he also leaves some unanswered questions, I think. For example, did Jesus know that the storm was going to hit? And if so, why didn't he do something about it, right? I mean, doesn't he have the power to do this? Or maybe Jesus knew this was going to be this test of faith for these disciples. Or maybe this was an opportunity for these disciples to actually see that God had given Jesus this divine authority over all creation, and Jesus could control creation through this miracle. Or maybe in this moment, this was the opportunity for those disciples to choose. Do they want to choose fear and doubt, or do they want to choose faith and trust in God? Do we rely on ourselves when life is uncertain or unknown? I think like these disciples were trying to figure out, or do we put our faith fully in Jesus to lead us when those storms hit? Because those storms are going to come, and endurance is so important when those storms come our way. I love how James puts it in James chapter 1. "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." I don't know what the storm is that's raging in your life right now. Maybe it's an uncertainty about a job. Maybe it's a prognosis that has come from your doctor. Maybe it's brokenness in your family and the relationships that are there. Maybe it's difficulty getting pregnant. Maybe it's the death of a loved one. Maybe it's struggles that you have with God. Whatever those fears may be, whatever that storm may be, don't let those fears and doubt take over you, because these storms that hit, we are promised them, really are a test of our faith. Will I try to rely on myself through this storm, or will I put my faith and trust in God and let God guide me through the storms? Let's go back to Jesus. I told you a little bit earlier that I was going to come back to him and say, hey, let me talk about his attitude in this storm, because I think this is the learning opportunity for us. Jesus actually shows incredible faith in this storm. Chaos is reigning all around, and Jesus is asleep, which means Jesus was at peace. Here is Jesus, who is fully embodying what this faith and trust in God looks like. He has absolute trust in God's sovereignty for him and God's plan for him. He's not asleep because he doesn't care. He's sleeping because he finds his peace in this trust and this faith he has in God. In our storms, do you and I have that same faith and trust as Jesus did? Are we finding that same kind of peace even when that suffering comes? Are we able to experience this joy like James talks about here in James chapter 1? See, I think in this moment, and what happens here with these disciples, they get a glimpse of that faith. They finally can begin to understand this faith that Jesus has in God. And we understand, they get a glimpse of this because of what they say in verse 41. It says, they were terrified and asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. You got to understand how powerful this moment is. These guys went from absolute fear to now awe, right? They see that Jesus has power over creation, that God has given this power to him. They came into this fearful for their lives, and now they just can't believe this incredible miracle that they have just seen. They go from asking the question, "Don't you care?" to now asking, "Who is this?" Which I believe builds in them this incredible, deeper faith. Like now they're beginning to fully trust and understand who God is and who Jesus was for them. For many of us, I think that's the place we have to get to also when it comes to our journey, is to put our faith and our trust in Jesus. And that begins by us taking a powerful step in our spiritual journey. And we talk about this quite a bit here, talking about it quite a bit within this series. It's this act of baptism. When we are baptized, we are saying to those around us, I believe Jesus is who he says he is. I believe God has given him divine authority of the storms in my life, and I'm going to put my faith and trust in him. And so when we're baptized, we really are buried under that water, and our fear, our doubts are left there as we come back out of it to this life of faith and trust because of Jesus now being a part of who we are. We actually see this within the story. What I mean is, I don't know if you caught this early on, it said not only were Jesus and the disciples in a boat, it said many other boats followed. Okay? So, is that 3 boats, 10 boats, 20 boats? We don't know. Here's what I do know. There is only one boat that has Jesus in it. All these other boats don't have Jesus in it. What are they doing in the midst of the storm? What are they trying to do? They're trying to save themselves. Maybe they got buckets and they're trying to dump the water out. Maybe they're jumping overboard. We don't know. But that fear is there for them too. But they don't have Jesus in that boat with them. Only one boat does. And it's the one the disciples are in. And for some of us, we're kind of like all those other boats, right? We're out on the water. We're trying to figure life out. The storms keep hitting. And let's just be honest. When they keep hitting, or they've been hitting us for a long time, our boat's starting to sink. And maybe for some of us, our boat is sinking right now. But we can invite Jesus into our boat. Hey, we can say, hey, you know what? Jesus, you can sleep back there if you want to. I just want to know you're close by when I need you. I just need to know that you're present in my life. And maybe for some of us, it's taking that step of baptism. August 10th, 5 weeks from now, we have a baptism Sunday, and we got a group of people who are taking that step. If you'd like to take that step that day, we'd love for you to sign up. You can do that through the QR code in front of you or through our app. Joel is doing a baptism class. If you got questions about baptism, want to hear more about it, on July 27th, that's happened during our 1045 service, during this service, over at the White House across the lawn, not the one on Pennsylvania Avenue, but the one right over here across the lawn. But you can sign up for that too and ask questions. Just kind of hear what baptism is all about. We really believe this is a huge part of our spiritual journey. And it's the moment that we get to invite Jesus to be a part of our life and into our boat when those storms hit us. But how about for the rest of us? Okay, maybe we've taken that step before in our life. What else can we do? Let me leave you with these 2 thoughts quickly. Shift your focus from the storm to the presence of God. Now, this doesn't mean we act like the storm doesn't happen. Some people try to do that, but that storm's not going anywhere, right? Remember, like it just said, remember who's in the boat with you. Remember Jesus is there with you. Now, when that storm hits, it's so easy to get caught up in the fear and doubt. Maybe what we need to do is just kind of stop and think to the past, and the past experiences we've had, and just be reminded, oh yeah, that was another storm in my life. I didn't think I was going to make it through that, but I did. And now I can look back at it and say, oh, I know how I made it through that. That was all because of God, right? That was all because I put my trust and faith in God. Now, it was hard, but I can see how God led me out of that. Maybe that's the step you take right now when that storm is in your life, that you change your focus from the storm to the presence of God in your life by looking back and remember what God has done for you. Could be through prayer. We acknowledge God's power and unconditional love for us. We remember who God is. Or, man, we have scriptures in our mind that we have memorized. And when the storm's hitting, maybe we're just repeating them over and over again. Something like Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Sometimes we just got to change our focus from the storm that's happening and be reminded of the presence of God. And then something else we can do is trust God in the midst of your storms. It's easy to try to control what's going on around us when those storms hit. Like I said, many times we're in a boat by ourselves and that boat is sinking. We need to acknowledge that storm, right? Not forget about it. Acknowledge it is there. Say, God, I can't fix this, but I trust that you can. Instead of accusing God of, God, why aren't you in this? God, why aren't you doing anything? God, why would you allow this to happen to me? Say, hey, God, this is really hard. I'm fearful. I'm struggling. I'm terrified. But I also know you can guide me through this storm. So help me. And maybe for some, it's just trusting God in the midst of our storms and beginning to take those small steps to move from fear to faith. I love what James says in James chapter 1, verse 12. It says, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. That if we go through this time where we are testing, our faith is tested because these storms keep coming up and over within our life, right? At some point in time, we have to learn to endure through them, to persevere through them, like James says a little bit earlier. But I love this because he says, if we do that, if we put our trust and faith in Christ, there is a reward. And maybe it's in this lifetime. Maybe we get to experience that in this lifetime. We get to experience that healing. We get to experience that relationship being mended. We get to experience that financial freedom. Whatever it may be, we might get to experience that reward by putting our faith and trust in Jesus now. But the real reward, as James says here, is the crown of life. And when we leave this place, that real reward is being with God in heaven. Even though those storms may have been so difficult in this life here on earth.